Hello, welcome to FreeThinking Ministries, where we like to help people reason together by applying logic and sound theology to all aspects of life. I am your host, Josh Klein, joined by, as usual, by Dr. Tim Stratton, president of FreeThinking Ministries. We want to first say thank you to all the people who helped us out with our Give Where You Live campaign. It was very successful. It was good. We've got a friend joining the program here shortly as well to discuss a lot of things. We talk about all sorts of things that intersect with culture and theology. And Tim, today, in fact, as we're recording this, your talk from Sound Faith about politics and Christianity is going live on our YouTube. And this is kind of the intersection of that as well. We're going to be talking about what it means to have satire as part of the Christian conservative movement. And we're going to be talking about what's going on. What is going on the right? Because there are, dare I say, evil things happening. And we've got a guest that we're excited to welcome to the stage here today. Seth Dillon, you are the owner of Babylon Bee, is that correct?
Owner and CEO. Yep.
Owner and CEO. You are the one running. So any of those funny headlines we get across our Facebook, the Satire, they're coming from your team.
That's right.
You are in charge of them.
I do less and less writing today than I used to. We have enough people now to help out with that workload.
Yeah. So you're not as funny as you used to be. Is that what you're saying?
Unfortunately, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
But I get to borrow their jokes all the time and share them, and when I give talks, I can incorporate a lot of that material. So it's so easy to get people laughing when you have all this material to just throw up on the screen.
Well, man, I've got to thank you, and I've kind of told you this before, but I want to do it publicly because I feel like you've played one of the biggest roles in, saving America, stopping us from going off a cliff several years ago. The way you and the Babylon Bee took a stand against Twitter and said, no, we're not going to compromise. We're not going to take down that tweet. And then Twitter said, fine, you're banned. And then some guy named Elon Musk was upset about that and said, fine, I'll just buy Twitter so that we can have the Babylon Bee back so that we can have freedom of speech again, which I really think played a huge role in the last election. So Seth, thank you. You literally are on the front lines making a huge difference. Would you want to talk about that whole experience just a little bit?
I'll tell you, it was crazy because, there's no expectation that something like that is going to happen. When you make a decision to take a stand for something, you never bank on or count on anybody coming to your rescue. There was no expectation of that whatsoever. We're very fortunate that Elon was already deeply concerned about the restrictions on speech and thought that he was seeing. And he was, he had a lot of personal experience with what he calls the woke mind virus impacting his own family. He also had personal experience with it on the streets of, these cities in California. He's got, in Austin as well, you've got where he's got headquarters all over the place, right? I'm here in Florida. He's all over the place with all these companies that he's running, but he lives in kind of these woke epicenters, and so he was seeing the outworkings of some of those policies and ideas in the streets and in his own life and in his own relationships, and then online, of course, that's where the conversation takes place. Twitter was one of the places where everybody that's got an audience is speaking there and sharing their thoughts. And so that's where the discourse was happening. But the discourse was lopsided, and it was lopsided by design, where you had certain views and opinions, including statements of fact, by the way, not just opinions, but literal statements of fact, like men can't become pregnant, for example. Things like that are just, considered off limits. They were baked into the terms of service as enforceable policy violations. And so the restriction on speech was very deeply concerning to him, because what it meant was the bad ideas could go unchecked. You couldn't refute them, and you couldn't ridicule them. And when he learned that you couldn't ridicule them because the Babylon Bee tried and got banned for it, that was very upsetting to him. He took that very seriously. He didn't find that funny at all. So he was concerned about that issue before that. Our banning obviously caught his attention, and he reached out to us. We thought he was joking on the phone when he's like, well, maybe I just need to buy Twitter and take care of this problem. But
Right.
it turns out he was being serious. So the coolest thing ever, I'll tell you, one of the most surreal experiences I've ever had in my life, it's right up there at the top, was when we walked into Twitter headquarters, close to a year after we had been banned. Maybe it was a year after we had been banned. He had set us free, once he took over, but then invited us to Twitter to sit down and interview him at the HQ. And so we fly to San Francisco and sit down behind enemy lines, and that's at the headquarters of the platform that had banned us,
Wow.
from speaking, to sit with the new CEO and talk about free speech. And so that was just amazing. We got to hand him an IOU for $44 billion too.
I saw that. That
Yeah,
was one of the best things
sir.
That's
a hat
great.
tip to Dumb and Dumber, right?
Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah. That's an IOU. So
It's as good as cash.
it's as good as cash, and you might want to hold on to that one.
Yeah.
We were very blessed. We were very fortunate. These things don't happen by accident. Obviously, I believe that God has a hand in a lot of these things, but they don't happen by accident in the sense that, real change doesn't come without people being willing to stand up and do something to affect the change, right? The world is what we make it. And so, I tell that story all the time when I turn around and I talk about it, just to try to embolden other people to say, look, when you have these kinds of authoritarian impulses that are making their way into the mainstream, and you're being subject to these rules that restrict your religious freedom or your freedom of thought or your freedom of speech, and go against your values, you have to be willing to push back on them. If you are willing to, other people will feel like they have permission to also push back on it.
That's right.
Next thing you know, that snowballs into something, and you actually get the result that you want. So I think the left overplayed their hand with all of that stuff, and it came back to bite them. And if we played a small part in that, glory to God, man. That was a cool experience.
And before I let Josh jump in here, I've got to say that I do, Josh and I want to talk to you about some theology later if we have time. But I noticed that you seem to be saying that God is sovereign and we have a real role to play in this thing, that we aren't just puppets. Am I right?
You are right. Yeah. My view on that issue, which we've discussed, but amongst ourselves and maybe a little bit online, is that God, of course, is in control. God is sovereign. Yeah. There's nothing that we can do. There's nothing that anybody can do that God doesn't allow them to do.
That's right.
But the whole concept of moral responsibility, and we are moral creatures, is predicated on the idea that we have the choice to do either the right thing or the wrong thing. And so, God puts that responsibility on us, and he holds us accountable for how we handle that responsibility. And it was his will, it was his sovereign choice to give us that ability. So I don't think it's in any way detracts from, the glory or holiness or greatness or sovereignty of God for us to be free, in the sense that we actually can make meaningful decisions and actions.
And this is where one's theology actually makes a difference in the real world, because your theology is your foundation and it drives how you live, and it's driven you to make free, responsible choices and actually take risks because you trust our sovereign God.
Right.
And so I would want people to see this, that theology has consequences. And
it does. Yeah. It's where the rubber meets the road. That's right. And which you want to adopt a worldview that comports with reality. And this is our real experience as well, is that our decisions actually matter. It's not just an illusion. They actually do matter. Now, of course, there are things that we don't see, that we don't know, that we have such a limited perspective. We can't gauge on our own the extent to which God is involved in any of the things that we're doing. That's somewhat veiled from us, but we have his word to tell us what his character is like and who he is and what he prioritizes. He's described as love. And he honors our freedom and holds us responsible for our actions, and tells us to turn. He pleads with us through the prophets to turn from our wicked ways.
That's right.
And so, wickedness is of course, for fallen people, sort of our default, but God is calling on us to flout that, and to turn to him, and to rest in his promises, and to rely on his strength to do the right thing. So yeah, I have strong views about all of that. I've gotten into a lot of debates and angered a lot of my friends Those can be very touchy topics because, the sovereignty of God is a big conversation, as you know, and people can get really heated about it.
We wouldn't know anything about that.
Yeah. But I do think, just on the subject of freedom really quickly, we're talking about free speech. One thing that's really interesting to me is I do think that there are really positive effects, obviously, from restoring more freedom when freedom was restricted. But of course, as you know, through our own free will that God has given us, when you give people freedom, they can do the wrong thing and they can say the wrong things. And so you restore freedom of speech on a platform like Twitter, and you're going to get all kinds of vile stuff all over the place. And so it's going to become, in many ways, a much darker place. And from my perspective, that just means there's all the more of an imperative on us to meet that darkness with light, to confront bad ideas with the truth, to defend and promote what's good and true. And so it increases our responsibility. But it doesn't mean that we need to respond to it by saying, oh, well, look what we've let in. We've got like sewage seeping in, and we need to do something to block that. Well, the way to block that, in my view, as someone who honors liberty and believes that liberty is in fact God-given, is to fight against it in the marketplace of ideas, to push back on it, to expose it, drag those bad ideas into the light and deal with them there, rather than trying to suppress and silence other voices, because then you're infringing on people's freedom. Yeah. They have the right to be terrible. They have the right to be wrong. They have the right to be offensive. And you can tune out, you can block them. Ideally, you refute them and you ridicule them. That's my philosophy.
You're preaching to the choir here. We 100%, we're 100% behind you, which is why we wanted to have this conversation with you. In relation to that, tell me about, Babylon Bee is satire. Now you've got Not the Bee, which is not satire, but Babylon Bee is satire. What is the role of satire in this sort of discourse? What does it help do? Because I know some people who don't have a sense of humor that think, oh, this is just, this is all just fluff, and I don't know why Christians aren't involved in it. So why do you think that satire plays the role that it does in furthering that discourse? And as Christians, why should we employ it?
Those are great questions. One of the chief objections I get from Christian audiences is that mockery is mean and cruel. Humor can be very harmful and offensive, and we should be, we should exercise charity and kindness and humility, and we shouldn't engage in anything that would make people, feel uncomfortable or offended. And so we have to watch what we do and say very carefully. And there's, of course, truth to that. There's tremendous truth to that. I think the project of satire, the goal of it, though, is not, to use mockery to make people feel bad about themselves, to put them down and make them feel. But it's not bullying or just derogatory for the sake of being derogatory or denigrating. It's using humor as a vehicle for truth, to push back on ridiculous and absurd ideas and hypocrisy and double standards, and expose these things for what they are. Of course, there's some biblical precedent for using hyperbole and mockery and ridicule. You see it in the prophets, you see it in the words of Jesus himself. But in addition to that, I just think that it's very obviously the case. I love quoting Lewis in these discussions, because he said I think it was in The Abolition of Man, where he said that good philosophy must exist if for no other reason than because bad philosophy needs to be answered. And I think that's exactly why satire must also exist, is because satire is one of the most effective ways to cut down bad ideas and expose them for what they are. You can argue with somebody and try to convince them of your position, and that can be very fruitful, more oftentimes for the people listening in than the person you're talking to, who's kind of steadfast in their position. But argument is certainly effective. I think in many ways, mockery and humor can be more effective. And it was Chesterton who said that humor can get in under the door while seriousness is still fumbling at the handle. And he had a great way of putting
Chesterton.
things. It's certainly better than I could say it. But what a great way of illustrating the way that humor kind of slips past your defenses. It gets you to laugh about something and see something from a perspective that you may not have seen in another way. And it doesn't make you quite so defensive, especially if you're not the target of the joke. Someone else is the target of the joke. people, when they are the target of the joke, tend to respond very negatively, and they're like, I usually like satire, but this time you went too far. Like, well, this time this time it poked at one of your sacred cows. If you're okay with it when we do it with others, you need to be okay with it when it comes your way. But I guess ultimately the point that I want to make in response to that is the purpose of what we do is to use humor in it for a healing purpose. And so you can think of it kind of like one of the illustrations I use to describe what we do and why we do it is like when you think of a surgeon performing a cut on someone with a scalpel in order to cut out like a tumor or something like that. They're cutting somebody, yes, and that might sting. They're doing harm in one sense, right? But in a much deeper sense, they're targeting something bad. They're cutting for a healing purpose. And that's very different. It's dramatically different from running around with a knife and stabbing people just to harm them. You are literally, you're cutting them for a healing purpose. And the thing that's damaged the most by jokes, by humor, by mockery, by ridicule is our pride. And God doesn't just want to see our pride pricked. He wants to see it destroyed.
Yeah.
So, when people respond and they bristle at jokes and humor, oftentimes it's coming from their pride, which needs to be, jostled a little bit. And they need some dents in that armor they put around themselves. And so I think it's very healthy for us to take ourselves less seriously. I think humor, a lot of the humor that we do, you'll notice on the Babylon Bee, is self-deprecating humor. We make fun of ourselves a lot. Yeah. We make fun of the church a lot. And we are part of the church. And
right. So you love the church.
We love the church, and it's done. Yeah. It's done from a place of love, and it has a healing purpose. And so I think one of the worst ideas to come out of the last, couple of decades is the idea that humor is harmful, that people need to be kept in their safe spaces, that we don't want to offend anybody. I think that what ends up happening when you protect, especially young people, from jokes and mockery and humor because it might hurt their feelings or offend them, is that you create this sense of entitlement in them that they should never be offended by anything. And then they just grow up to be spoiled brat children in adult bodies.
And throwing tantrums.
Throwing tantrums and being immature and lacking resilience, which they need to survive in the world. And so you're actually doing them a favor when you condition them to be okay with jokes, even at their expense sometimes. So I think there's a lot of positives to it. You can have debates about all of that, but I think there's strong justification for it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You go ahead, Tim. But I was just gonna say I couldn't agree more. Yeah,
we got to disagree on something at some point. We'll get to that.
What I love about the Bee is, I can write a long article with all these deductive arguments, reaching these conclusions that are just airtight and logically sound. And with one good headline and a funny meme, you can make the same point and people get it just like that. And they don't have to think through all the logic. So, I mean, you're
still fumbling at the handle while I'm
I guess that's right. I mean, but there's just some brilliance. And I mean, you do have to be funny like you guys are. You have to be extremely smart. I think of Paul Copan. You know Paul?
Yeah, I do know Paul.
Yeah, he lives in your neck of the woods. And, I went to Israel with him and some other folks a few years ago, and we spent 10 days together in this bus. And I realized just how hilarious the guy is. And then it hit me. It's because he's so freaking smart that he can connect all these dots and make jokes so quickly. But I don't know if people realize really how smart you have to be to make good, witty jokes that actually make points and hit people where they're at.
There's that layers to that. Yeah. There's layers to it because, if we're going to hire somebody to write for the Bee, then there needs to be a combination of things working together. There has to be a certain worldview in place, because we're writing from a particular perspective. Mm-hmm. There has to be at least some depth to the theological understanding, knowledge of the church and the clashing viewpoints between the different denominations. Like we have a very ecumenical team. There's a lot of mix, but there's you need the combination of the knowledge and experience. Ideally, these are people who have lived in the church. A lot of them grew up and were homeschooled and have experience with that, and so they have like their own personal experience blended together with their worldview and just their witty insight. These are people from all walks of life. Some of them are doctors or software engineers or construction workers or whatever that just happen to be very, very witty and funny. And there's something that you can't teach about kind of seeing how a particular event that happens, something that somebody says or does in the real world, like being able to kind of twist that and make a point off the back of that with humor, parodying it. There's a special insight that you kind of need to have to see where that could go. Because usually when we tell a joke, people read it. This has happened to me a lot of times reading Babylon Bee headlines. I read it, I'm like, man, I wish I'd thought of that. That's really funny. But
Right.
my mind didn't even go there, you know?
Yeah.
And that's kind of a special talent that some people have, where their mind just goes there when they see something and they're able to produce, you know, a funny result. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to teach that to someone who doesn't just naturally have that ability.
Yeah, I do think there's a natural talent that comes to that. I mean, you can be really smart and unfunny as well, but
yeah,
right.
Absolutely. We've all known those. We've all known some of those people.
Well, and some of them aren't funny in person either. They're not funny when you like talk to them. They're funny when they put pen to paper and write funny jokes.
Interesting.
Yeah. Not every writer is a good stand-up comedian. You know, that sort of thing. One of the things that you mentioned, I kind of want to go back to, because this idea of being able to kind of make fun of yourself, and it seems like the right used to be able to do that. I remember when South Park came out with the Charlie Kirk episode, and Charlie Kirk thought it was hilarious, and he knew it was satire. He knew it was making fun of him. He knew South Park didn't agree with him, but people on the left thought that he thought South Park was celebrating him. They could not understand that somebody on the right could appreciate good satire pointed at themselves.
Right. And appreciate a joke at their own expense.
Yeah. And I remember how. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, if there's a question there, I was kind of just going to piggyback on that, just to say that the right is losing that ability to some extent.
That's what I was going to get to. Have you seen? Because I feel like I've seen, in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination, and even a little bit before that, this rise of the woke right, it seems like we're starting to lose that ability to poke ourselves because we're so afraid of calling out the ridiculousness on quote unquote our own side. Is that something you're seeing too? Or I guess you already said it, that's something we're losing.
Yeah, we are. You know, I was very encouraged by the response we got from Vivek Ramaswamy. I don't know if you remember the dust up with him that happened. I think it was back at the beginning of last year. So like maybe January 2024, something like that. We had done a joke about how Trump gave Vivek a position managing the 7-Eleven at the White House that he just installed. And you know, there were layers to this joke. Really the butt of the joke was Trump. But everyone wanted to be offended on Vivek's behalf, that we had said that, you know, this Indian guy is going to work at this 7-Eleven, you know, and this is a racist joke, you know, he should be offended. And Vivek responded to it saying, I think it's funny. I think it's great. This is, you know, this is satire. There's obviously truth to the joke. And not everything that you can't walk around expecting comedians to tap dance around everyone's feelings and never say anything that's offensive. You know, the point of the joke wasn't to disparage any particular race. It was just going for laughs. That's all, just trying to be funny. So, you know, his response that was awesome. And we ended up sitting down with him. I interviewed him in person to talk about that, and how important it is that we not take ourselves so seriously, that we be willing to laugh at these jokes. And everybody wanted to be offended on his behalf. It was mostly white people who were offended on Vivek's behalf. And he's like, you guys don't need to coddle me. I can handle humor. Why can't you handle humor? You know? Yeah. So I really loved his response. That was really healthy. That is going away though. And a lot of it has to do with, that kind of, it's a woke mindset. It's this mindset that there are certain untouchable things. There's this oppressed versus oppressor framework. There's certain people and things that you shouldn't joke about. It's just not funny. And you know, I do think that there are lines that can be crossed with jokes that can be deeply insensitive, especially when they're told at the wrong time, with the wrong target, in the wrong spirit. But generally speaking, I would defend comedy that is even offensive in the sense that there is a butt of the joke. Someone is the butt of the joke. Almost every joke is offensive in that way. generally speaking, I think that we need to have a healthy respect for that and be willing to laugh at ourselves. We are starting to lose that a little bit. I'm dismayed by that. There's been a lot of people recently that we've made fun of on the right that have gotten very angry and kind of crashed out, so to speak, in response to jokes that we've told. And I just think it's so weird because those are the same people that used to mock the left for being humorless scolds. And you just wonder, how did that change so quickly where now all of a sudden you're the humorless scold? You're not willing to laugh at yourself. And guess what? You deserve to be laughed at sometimes because you're doing some of the same types of things that they're doing. A very notable example of somebody who crashed out for months was when we joked last Christmas about how Candace Owens was outraged to discover that Christmas was started by the birth of a Jew. And she was talking about that joke for literally months afterwards. And this isn't satire, this isn't funny, this isn't humor, this is, there's something deeper and more sinister here. We're paid shills from Israel, and all this stuff.
Which plays right into the joke. I'm sorry, it's just
it does. It plays directly into the joke. No one has ever validated a joke faster. And that's often what you find, and that's what's interesting with satire is the response that you get oftentimes to the joke almost immediately validates the joke in the first place because of how the way that they react and the things that they say and the reaction. It's like, well, this joke obviously, first of all, it must have hit close to home because you're so sensitive about it, but you're engaging in the very behavior we were mocking you for. So it's a little unsettling and disconcerting. I hope we get that back. The B will continue to joke about anyone and everything.
Good.
Whether anybody likes it or not, will continue to make enemies. I now tell people, guys, when I meet them, I often tell them, I'm like, when I meet prominent people, people that we might write about because everyone knows who they are. I warn them. I'm like, okay, you got my number. I've got yours. We're friends now, but there may come a time when we tell a joke about you. I need to know that you can handle that because you might deserve it one day. And it's a laugh. People laugh about it. We'll see how a lot of them respond down the road.
If you ever make fun of Josh, I won't be offended.
Yeah. Neither will I.
You brought up Candace, so maybe this is a good time to pivot here a little bit. You also mentioned, things hitting close to home. She accused you of being part of the plot to murder Charlie Kirk. And, not to toot our own horn here, but Josh and I, way back in September, we're going public and denouncing that.
It's fun to see people catching up to that, by the way. I mean, it's way too late, but I shared a reel that we did probably 2 weeks after Charlie was assassinated, where we said it was the reel where she said, no one can stop me except for Erica or my husband. And I said in that reel, I don't believe her. I don't believe her for a second, because as soon as Erica comes out and says stop, your response will be to move the goalposts and say, well, either she's in on it or someone, they got to her. She's compromised too. And lo and behold, what do we find just this week? That's exactly the tact that she chose. Sorry.
And Erica literally said, stop.
Yeah.
Yes.
Stop. She said it, looked right into the camera on multiple interviews, one on Fox and one with CBS.
Yes.
Looked right at the camera and said, stop. I want you to stop. And Candace has decided, no, I'm going to double down and keep going.
No one, and I mean absolutely no one, outside of my husband and Erica Kirk has the power to shut me up right now. That's it. There's nobody that has the capacity to get me to shut up about this except for Erica Kirk. And I will say this, like, I am on this journey to figure out what happened on that day. I'm not going to stop unless Erica Kirk asks me to stop. I said early on, if Erica Kirk asks me to be quiet, I will be quiet.
But when you go after my family, my Turning Point USA family, my Charlie Kirk Show family, when you go after the people that I love, and you're making hundreds and thousands of dollars every single episode, but this is not okay.
The podcaster Candace Owens, okay? At one time, a friend of Charlie's, at one time, an employee of Turning Point. She has been one of the main peddlers of these conspiracies, and she is making a huge amount of money on it. She is building her business off of these lies. What do you want to say to her and the other people that are putting these lies out into the world right now?
Stop. That's it. That's all I have to say. Stop.
I can only honor that if Erica is more explicit in terms of what I have lied about. What did I lie about?
That was predictable. I would say that you're a prophet, but that was pretty predictable.
Yeah. We're not trying to toot our own horn, except for to say, what do you think is behind the there just seems to be a hesitancy. We're not well known at all, so I suppose the risk was negligible for us, but we have experienced our own pushback from people in that and many other things. We have resolved to just say the truth, and the chips will fall where they may. We've lost money, we've lost support, and we're a small ministry. But what do you think is behind? It just seems like there are prominent people who are brave to say things about other people that are afraid to call people like Candace Owens out, people like Ian Carroll out. I'm thinking particularly of people like Michael Knowles, Matt Walsh, and some others that just, they will intimate it, but they won't say it. What is behind that? Why is there a fear on the right to not police our own, but to actually say the truth in those circumstances when we can do a whole movie about what is a woman in other circumstances?
I don't think there's anything wrong with using the word police. You backed off that kind of quickly, but I think that, there's gatekeeping is one of those dirty words today.
Yeah.
Like dispensationalism. You're not allowed to say it. It's so dirty. But I think it's a good thing. I think it's, what sense does it make? How can you even call yourself a movement? For example, if we're talking about the conservative movement, what does it even mean to have a movement if anyone, regardless of their views or values or policy positions, can infiltrate that movement and receive no pushback of any kind? There's certain movements are formed around ideas. And so there's certain ideas that should lie outside the boundaries of that movement. And if someone tries to say they're in the movement, someone has to say, no, those aren't part of our movement. Well, who gets to say that? Well, all of us should be willing to have the debate about what constitutes a movement that we claim to be a part of. And we should feel perfectly free, and not just free to, but we should be motivated to gatekeep in that way and push back, because the last thing that you want is for your movement to be infected by bad ideas. That leads to the destruction of the movement, not its flourishing and success. So I really strongly oppose this idea of unity just for the sake of unity. We need to have unity. We can't have this infighting. We all need to band together because the enemy is the left and we need to defeat the left. And I certainly agree that the secular progressive left has to be confronted and they have to lose in the culture. I don't want them to continue to control the institutions in the way that they do, to force their ideology down our throats, to try to eradicate religious freedom and trample on our rights. Like, I hate all of that. I think all of that should be opposed. The indoctrination of children and all of those things, abortion. You can go down a very long list of all these things that need to be opposed, but it's a mistake. It's a very grave mistake to act like bad ideas can only be located in one place and that you should have all of your attention there. If I turn my back to threats that are behind me now and I'm only focusing on what's over here, someone's going to get me from behind. And one of the illustrations I used in a speech recently about this point was how I went to this diagnostic imaging place to have a body scan done, just to see if there's anything that stands out on this scan. I'm getting older now, I want to make sure I'm being proactive in my health. And so I went and did this body scan, and I was very relieved to learn that they scanned my entire body and not just the left side. They looked for cancer everywhere. And I think it's a great way of illustrating the point that we have to be willing to look for cancer wherever it lives, whether it's on the left or the right side of the body. And I think there are cancerous ideas that are flourishing right now on the right as well as the left. And it doesn't mean that we can't. Why can't we why can't we walk and chew gum at the same time? Why can't we oppose the stuff that's coming from the left while also opposing, white supremacy and just deep animosity towards Jewish people and minorities and some of the stuff that's that's rearing its ugly head over there needs to be addressed, and needs to be addressed very firmly and loudly.
Hey, if you've liked the content so far, boy, have we got a deal for you. We are only funded by viewers like you, not like PBS, who gets all the money from the state and stuff like that. Only funded by people who believe in the mission of Free Thinking Ministries. So please join us. You can join us at freethinkingministries.com/donate. That's freethinkingministries.com/donate. We exist so that we can help people apply logic and sound theology to all aspects of life. And we're doing that here on this very podcast. So please do that. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell. Never miss an episode. Now, back to our conversation.
And people are unwilling to do that for a number of reasons. To finally get back to answering your question more directly, why are some people hesitant to do that? They have all kinds of excuses. One of them is loyalty to friends. Some of these, if someone is a friend of mine, I guess I'm supposed to just never confront them or address anything that they do. It doesn't matter how bad it is. They're a friend of mine. I don't think you have an obligation to your friends to overlook when they're promoting evil.
Right.
I think our loyalty needs to be to the truth. Our loyalty needs to be to what's good and what's true. And if our friends diverge from that and they start promoting something that's literally evil and harmful, then they need to be confronted. Privately, sure. But if they're promoting it publicly as well, and they have a large platform, and you have a large platform, then I think, yes, you have a moral duty to confront that publicly too, because that's where the damage is being done in the public sphere. You accomplish nothing for the culture by dealing with that behind closed doors when it's spreading and infecting people's minds out in society itself. You have to be willing to be a voice out there on the front lines of that fight. So I think that's kind of a cop-out response. I do honestly think that a lot of this is driven by cowardice, simply because, and I don't like using that word to describe some of these people, because I think some of the people that we're talking about right now have exhibited a lot of boldness and courage. Right. I have tremendous respect for them for the courage. Like you mentioned, Matt Walsh. Yeah. Matt Walsh has been under threat.
Oh yeah.
His family, his own life, his family has been threatened for years. The left hates him, and there have been attempts on his life. There's people who are literally threatening him and his family all of the time. He has exorbitant security costs to keep him and his family safe. So I obviously sympathize with that, and I admire him for his courage. I think it is a problem, though. Courage has to be. You can't be selective about when you decide you're going to be courageous. I think in the virtue and courage is being courageous whenever it's needed. Not just when it comes at a cost, but especially when it comes at a cost. And sometimes that cost is losing friendships. And I do think that as Christians, we have a moral duty to be willing to lose friendships when people are trying to hold us hostage and require our silence. So we were talking about Candace Owens a minute ago. Candace Owens, when she first started attacking me publicly, she said on her show that I should have given her silence. I owed her silence because I was a friend of hers, and she expected and required my silence. And the fact that I spoke up and disagreed with her on something meant that I had betrayed her, that I was a traitor, that I was the Judas at the table, that I stabbed her in the back, that I kicked her when she was down. She said all of those things. And I think that if somebody's promoting bad ideas and they're requiring your silence, then they're not your friend. They're holding you hostage. And you have to be willing to lose that friendship to defend what's right and what's true. And I think other people will be better for that. And it's a shame to have to lose the friendship, but you can't. There's too much cost to preserving that friendship, cost to your own integrity, and cost to the culture itself to try to preserve that friendship by zipping your mouth shut. And so I'm not willing to pay that cost either for the culture or my integrity. And so it has resulted in me losing some friendships. Tucker Carlson's another one of them. These things are, and now Megyn Kelly, these things are all going sideways. And it's just, I'm unwilling to play that way. If you want a friend who's never going to challenge your bad ideas, then I'm not your guy.
Right.
Well, and I would say that that's not a real friend. I would, Tim and I have often talked just individually, like, hey, call me out. Like, we're close together, and if he's airing or I'm airing now, and if we're close enough that if we saw one going publicly, we'd be like texting right away and being like, bro, you're off the rails right now, give me a call. But isn't it could it also be that there's just this, like you bring up Matt Walsh, and I have a lot of sympathy for him because of all the things you said, and probably Megyn Kelly to a certain extent too, but not as much. It seems there could be a blind spot of, these are the people that were with me when I was in trouble. And so now I have this blind spot towards them, because if I lose them, then I'm losing somebody who stood by me when I needed them, or I have very few relationships. And if I lose this, just feels like maybe it's, I guess I'm trying to say, maybe it's not cowardice as much as a blind spot. What would you think of that?
I'm going to disagree with that, because
okay.
So we're not agreeing.
Well, now you're not my friend.
Yeah. Well, here's where I disagree. I disagree because the primary person that we're talking about who's not been stood up to is Candace, right?
Yeah,
yes.
right.
And Candace is vicious. Candace is dishonest. Candace will, she will say things that she knows to be false about you that will inflict maximal damage on you and your reputation. And she will do that from the largest platforms in the world. She'll go on Tucker's show and say it, and then she'll go on another show and say it, and then she'll go on her own show, and there's millions of people. She can turn millions of people against you overnight.
Yes.
And she has a cult-like following. It's not cult-like, it is a cult.
Absolutely.
So the reason that I think fear is the primary motivator is because nobody wants to be on the receiving end of that. And I think that to some extent, I have been made out to be an example. I am someone who, Tucker mentions my name disparagingly all the time now, and so does Candace. And what they want to do, I think, is communicate to people, look, if you cross us, we will destroy you. And I am the example of what they will do if you disagree with them. Let me go back to what my original disagreement with Candace is. Do you guys happen to know what that was? What she considers the deep betrayal?
I don't.
I'll remember it when you say it, but refresh my memory.
Well, it was over the whole Christ is King controversy.
That's right.
When she was fired from Daily Wire, and she had said Christ is King to Ben. There was a conversation about whether or not she had been anti-Semitic when she said that, whether the phrase itself is anti-Semitic. It had been adopted by the Groypers. If you go to any of their profiles, go to Nick Fuentes' profile, it says America first, Christ is King. Yeah. It's like, and he's even said the reason he uses that phrase is to identify who's with him and who's against him. And anybody who isn't willing to say that Christ is King, for example, a Jew doesn't say that Christ is King, right? Well, they're other than, they're less than, they are outside of they're not good, they're evil because they're opposed to Christ, right? So this is their way of delineating, who's in their camp and who's not. And they use it in very nasty ways. They'll say things like, Christ is King, you dirty Jew, in the comments to somebody. They say that to me all the time. So when this came up, I gently responded to Candace because she was saying, Christ is King. Of course, it's true. It's what every Christian should affirm. To suggest that it's anti-Semitic is ridiculous. She went on and on and on. So I commented under that. And I said, well, I disagree with you only in the sense that I don't disagree with you that the phrase is true. I affirm it myself with reverence and humility. I believe that Christ is King of the universe, and he's King of my own heart. So I affirm that Christ is King. What I don't appreciate is when people use that phrase, people who aren't really Christians, people who don't reflect Christ's heart, Christ's mission. They exhibit no fruits of the Spirit whatsoever. They are just out there trying to tear other people down. They assign collectivist guilt to the Jews as Christ killers, and they to provoke them and to disparage them, use this phrase to say things like, Christ is King, you dirty Jew. So in that context, they're taking the Lord's name in vain. Yes. And they're doing it for the purpose of putting down another person made in God's image. Rather than reaching out to that person with love or trying to persuade them to become a Christian, they're turning them away from Christ by using Christ's name as a weapon to bludgeon them.
And you explained this to Candace.
I explained this to Candace. So I said,
I remember this now.
Between saying the phrase and meaning it, and there's a difference between abusing the phrase in that way. And I said, but thank you for bringing up this topic. It's an important discussion. It was very gracious. I wasn't accusing her of anything. That's it. That was the deep betrayal that,
And you became a demon.
Yeah. I became a literal demon who's a psychopath behind the scenes and out in the open.
Well, actually, we have a clip of that that we were going to play.
Let's see
just for posterity's sake.
The attack they always do is they kind of try to make it seem like you're going crazy. That's the wildest part to me, is reading back the messages and they're like, oh, like, you know, like we're your friend. They always come at you as a friend. Like, I care about you. Like, are you okay, Dave? I saw you wrote that tweet about, like, you know, that Palestinian child and you said it looks sad. Like, are you okay? Like, is your marriage okay right now, Dave? Like, are there some things going on at home, Dave? Like, I'm your friend. Like, you know, you can always call me. This is their strategy behind the scenes, and it's also their strategy in front of the scenes. I think Seth Dillon is a literal demon. I will never, like, I can't explain to you, like, there's something very dangerous, like, psychologically wrong with him. This is how they behave, and the attack they always.
Okay, so clearing the air right now. Are there horns underneath the nice coif of hair you have there?
It's an interesting use of the word literal, isn't it? A literal demon.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm not a metaphorical demon. I'm a literal demon. Maybe I'm the one who clawed Tucker Carlson while he was sleeping.
Oh,
Ooh, that would be a good satire.
oh man.
I do know where he lives. So, you know, the thing that's interesting there is, you know, she puts this in the context of somebody. She's trying to make it sound like someone who's genuinely concerned for you has ill motives.
Yeah.
I don't understand that reaction. I don't understand the desire to frame it that way, to interpret it that way. You know, like if somebody's worried about me, somebody that I know, somebody that I consider a friend, reaches out to me and they're worried about me, or they're saying, look, you know, we may disagree on fun. This is some of the conversation I've had with Candace, is to say, look, you know, we disagree on a lot of things. We fundamentally disagree on a lot of things. We didn't used to. We do now. It doesn't mean we can't still be friends. It doesn't mean I'm not still here for you if you want to call and hear my perspective on something. I was like, listen, iron sharpens iron. Reach out to me. Call me if you want to see what my perspective is as someone who disagrees with you on some of these issues. I'm here for that. That was what I extended to her.
Right.
And you know, to go out there and call me a literal demon for that reason, I mean, it's wrong. It's really wrong to do that, to try to disparage somebody that way who has genuinely and sincerely positioned themselves to try to be a friend, even to somebody that they deeply disagree with. It's really wrong to return that rather than reciprocating it to try to turn that into something nefarious and malicious, which it certainly wasn't from my perspective. And
it seems ironic to me. I mean, she was really a voice against the Black Lives Matter movement, right? Right. Yeah. Well, of course, she's going to say, well, the phrase that the proposition Black Lives Matter is true, but that's not what it means. Yeah. And really, isn't this kind of the same kind of a thing? It's a great example, because that phrase, everyone wanted to, oh, you won't say Black Lives Matter. You won't put the black square on your Instagram. You know, like, why don't you think
wear the
Black
ribbon
lives matter? It's like, well, yeah, I do, but I also think that other lives matter. And you know, I don't buy into some of the narratives about how Black men are being hunted down by police and killed at these crazy rates and whatever. Like that, all of that is nonsense. And so, no, I reject what's behind that phrase. I reject the ideology. I don't reject what the phrase literally means. Of course, I think that Black Lives Matter. One of the one of the primary causes of death for Blacks is abortion. Yeah, I want to abolish abortion. Right. You know, it's like, of course, I think Black Lives Matter, but I really fundamentally think that all lives matter. And so, no, I'm not going to use that phrase because I know what it means. I know what you're actually trying to use it. And so, for the same reason, you know, the Christ is King thing, it's an exact parallel to that, where the phrase has something embedded in it when certain people use it. And I wouldn't say to anybody, I don't think that you should say Christ is King, but I would say that you shouldn't use it in certain ways, in certain contexts. Just like you shouldn't use Jesus' name as a curse word when you're frustrated, when someone cuts you off in traffic. You shouldn't do that. Yeah. It should be prohibited for the Christian to do that. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't ever say his name in any context. So, you know, these are the nuance is completely stripped from these things. And it's just trying to position people as, well, you're bad because you won't say or do what I want you to say or do, or because you're objecting to something that shouldn't be objectionable. But they had a whole conversation. She had a whole conversation about that with Tucker that lasted several minutes. And they went back and forth. And Tucker was like, oh, well, I thought it was a fundamental belief for Christians that Christ is king.
Yeah.
I can't
Come
believe
on,
that
Tucker.
Seth is against Christianity.
Right.
He's against Christianity. What
And he's
are you
smarter than
talking
that.
about?
He knows better, right?
He
Doesn't
knows better.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is these people are smart.
Mhm.
They're not dumb. They are malicious.
Yes.
There's a distinction.
Yeah, and I think it's incumbent then upon, I mean, people like us, and you have a much higher profile than we do, and so we pray for your safety and all that comes with that. But we felt a particular burden as well to call out that maliciousness on any side, but especially when the side that quote unquote calls us home. It's easy for me to call out the left because I'm on the right. But when I call out the right, like, I feel like that's more important than me calling out the left sometimes, because it shows my fidelity isn't to a side, it's to the truth.
Yes.
Right. Well, that will be interpreted, though, by many on the right as you're working for the left, because only someone who's working for the left would ever call out anyone on the right. It's this no enemies to the right principle.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mentioned why I reject that earlier. I think it's foolish. I think it's self-defeating. I think the people who are actually the right hand of the left are the ones who are sowing all this discord and division. And Tucker said on his show that he thinks that Christian Zionists are the worst people that he knows. They're the worst people that he's talking about, a huge swath of evangelical Christianity.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's ignorant of that or not. I don't think that he is.
No, he's not.
But he did walk that back later, but he said it, and I think he meant it when he said it. He just got so much backlash, he felt the need to walk it back. But the operatives, the activists, the influencers who are going for engagement with all this outrageous conspiracism and all these attacks on people like myself, they are in fact doing the left a service, because what they're doing is I'm fighting for, like you said, integrity, what's good and what's true. I'm fighting for a conservative movement that I think can actually win elections. One that stands firmly on the Constitution, on principles of liberty, that treats everybody as being equal in the image, having been made in the image of God. These are positions that speak to a lot of people and have wide support, and they also happen to be good and true.
That's right.
But what they're supporting and what they're promoting are these very radical and extreme and divisive and hateful ideas that alienate a lot of people and that aren't electable ideas. You can't get into office running on a platform like Nick Fuentes, where he says that, he's Team Hitler and that these
he respects Stalin.
When we get into power, speaking of the Groyper movement, when we get into power, these perfidious Jews and these Muslims and these blacks and whatever, they need to be put to death. They need to be executed. Come on, this is pure evil. And it's being packaged as like race realism or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
But these are not these. If these things are allowed to get into the mainstream, and many people like Tucker are helping them get into the mainstream, then that will be destruction for the right. And so when they try to tell you, when you're criticizing someone on the right, that you're working for the left, it's really projection. It's the opposite. They're working for the left, whether they're meaning to or not. They're going to hand every election to the left for the foreseeable future.
All right.
I tried making this point on X in a thread once, saying we are doing right now. The right is doing exactly what the left did with the far left, and it destroyed the far left. And the radicals took over, and I don't want to see that happen to the right. And I was met with vitriol, and again, I'm a nobody, but it was like, you don't know what you're talking about. I was called a Jew multiple times, which is, I guess, a pejorative. But I think that.
So you got to have the whole was Jesus a Jew conversation structure.
Yeah. Right.
By saying, well, Jesus was a Jew, and see what they say to that. They deny his Jewishness. Like, no, Jesus was a Christian.
Yeah.
Oh,
yes. So
he was killed by the Jews. He was a Christian who was killed by the Jews.
So I guess to round it out, because we're about out of time here. So thank you for your time.
We can hit
today.
if you want to go a little longer and hit some of the theology stuff. I'm happy to do that. I've got a little bit more time before I have to hop, so we can talk more unless you need to cut off.
Well,
yeah,
that'd be great.
Go ahead.
But yeah, you just let us know. I just want to say that I don't think that you're committed to the right. You're committed to the truth.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's, and when you're committed to the truth, well, truth is greater than our heroes. We've talked about a lot of people today that I used to kind of look at as heroes making a difference in the culture. I used to see Candace Owens and as kind of a hero, and I was rooting for her. And same thing with Tucker Carlson. And I look at the things that Matt Walsh has done, and I'm like, wow. I mean, we need him. We need these people. They've made a big difference.
Yeah, I've walked arm in arm with these people and fought fights alongside them for years. Yes.
Yeah. But when you're committed to truth, then you will criticize your heroes and your close friends and your family members when it happens. And man, if you guys wouldn't do that for me, then I guess we're not friends. But if you see me wrong, make fun of me all you want if you see me in the wrong. Because I want to be more committed to truth than the right or left. And I think that's true of both of you guys. And but before we leave from Candace, I've got several people in my family who have been Team Candace through much of this. And my sister, finally, she was one of them. And even over Thanksgiving, that led to a really interesting conversation. I was defending you, Seth, and others. And and I love my sister. She's way smarter than I'll ever be. But she's been following Candace for years and really saw her as a hero. But she just sent me this today. And she says, I want to know why Candace Owens feels like everyone owes her an explanation. She said that if Erica told her to stop, she would. Well, Erica told her to stop in her interview with Harris Faulkner. And now she's acting like Erica has no right to ask that either. When she was initially asking questions, it didn't bother me. I listened to all of her podcasts. The last week or two just kept getting weirder. Well, yesterday's just seemed pure evil. I feel stupid for giving her the benefit of the doubt. What would you say to my sister?
Well, I just appreciate her willingness to, think through these things rationally, and honestly, just think for herself rather than letting Candace do the thinking for her. I think that's the biggest. When I called it a cult earlier, the reason I said that is because, a lot of her followers are, they just go along with whatever she says, even if it contradicts what she said 5 minutes ago. And if you're thinking for yourself, you catch that and you realize that you were just, misled, that she's trying to gaslight you now and say something totally different from what she said a few minutes ago. And it's good that she has the intellectual honesty to reach that conclusion and to see this for what it is. I don't think that for a lot of people, especially people who've been paying a lot of attention to this stuff, I don't think it should have taken as long as it has. I think that one of the problems is that people, they like to, especially I'm talking more now about the influencers, the more prominent people with large followings online. They like to wait until the coast is clear, until they know where the wind is blowing, until it's safe before they poke their heads out. It's very risky. When you have 1 million followers, or you have 2 million followers, or 10 million followers, you might alienate 30% of them, 40% of them. You'll anger a lot of people if you come out on the wrong side of something, the wrong side being the one that's not popular at the moment, not whatever is the side of the truth, right? So there's a lot of calculations that are being made in people's heads about, is this something that I should comment on? Is this something that I should take a stand on? Is it something I should, just refrain from getting involved in because I have my opinion on it and I would challenge it, but it's not popular to challenge it. Those calculations are happening. And I think that's where the cowardice comes into play, where I talk about cowardice is I think, you have to be, I think you will actually find, and this is where there is a little bit of short-sightedness on the part of some of these people, you'll find that you generate a lot of support when you're willing to anger the mob and take that heat to stand up for the truth. There are so many people that appreciate that. And it does actually have the impact of spreading to others. It gives them permission to speak out too. And then once that starts to snowball, like we talked about before, then it becomes, more safe for others to come out and do it. And next thing you know, you've changed the whole conversation and you played a role in that. To sideline yourself from that because you don't want that backlash is very fearful and cowardly, in my opinion. It's not, and it's also somewhat self-defeating. I think there's a lot of people right now, Megyn Kelly's taking a ton of heat because she was defending Candace in all of this.
Yeah.
And now Candace is really, she's reached that, as your sister's comments illustrate, she's kind of reached this sort of tipping point where she's gone far enough that now she's starting to lose people that she had for a long time, even through a lot of the stuff, the stuff that I endured with, the Hamptons retreat that I was at, and the way that was characterized, like she didn't lose a lot of people with that. She continued to build her following because people believed that she was onto something,
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I'm encouraged to see that finally people are starting to see where this is going. What kind of discourages me a little bit is the fact that it took so long, because I've seen this for a long time myself. It's easier probably. Maybe I'm being too hard on some people. It's easier my position when I know what she said about me is false.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm me. I was there. I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that none of us sat there and coerced or blackmailed Charlie, held money over his head, and then when he turned it down, we had Israel kill him. I know that for a fact that didn't happen, but a lot of people don't know that didn't happen. I would like to think, though, that they would say, that's kind of outrageous. Why are we casting suspicion on everybody that was close to Charlie, that he knew, that he was friends with, that he trusted? Why are we casting suspicion on them when we actually have a killer in custody who's going to be facing trial? Like there's somebody who actually shot him. Yeah.
And it's like, how do we all of a sudden think that it's the FBI's duty to lay all the evidence out for the public to see before the trial takes place?
Yeah.
Like, why is that all of a sudden?
That's never been the case. It's not, that's not how you do these things. And it certainly risks tainting the jury pool and all of that. They have to be free to do their investigation. I do understand distrust of institutions.
Yes.
I obviously have less distrust now that Trump has won again. He's appointed some people that I know personally that I trust more than I trusted the other guys. I think that you can have more trust now than you could before. Whether that trust should be blind faith and complete, without any doubt or question or suspicion or skepticism, of course not. You're never going to get all the answers from the government. The government always has its own interests. Politicians that maneuver to these positions of power contradict themselves all the time. They lie all the time. They can't necessarily be trusted. Questioning things is on some level very healthy and fine. But there's I think this is one of the worst things that's happened with this whole conversation about Candace is this, because this is what she says is, well, am I not allowed to ask questions? And all of her followers are like, well, she's just asking questions. And I think your sister's starting to see that she's not just asking questions. There's so much more to it than that. And I also see the word insinuation. No, she doesn't make just insinuation. She makes definitive statements. She said literally everyone close to Charlie betrayed him. And she doesn't believe that anything in his life was real. And it's like, okay, well, if everyone close to him betrayed him, then you're obviously talking about Erica in that, right? You're talking about all these people that he put into these positions at Turning Point that were like his brothers that he worked with on a daily basis, that he trusted with his life. Like, was Charlie really that naive and foolish that he put traitors into all of these positions? Did he not?
Frank Turek. Frank Turek as well.
Frank Turek loved Charlie like a son. And he was caught up in the suspicion. And so a lot of people don't know that. They don't know how close the two of them were, that they talked every day, that Charlie leaned on Frank for his wisdom and his insight and trained with him on apologetics. Like they don't know the relationship that's there. But when people like him come out and give their story, they're still bought into the conspiracy. They're so bought into it. And a lot of that is due to the fact that there was so much distrust. There was a lot of fertile ground there for conspiracies to take root and to grow into a mess of weeds. And that we've seen that happen. It's very unfortunate. And there is massive incentive to drive that stuff, because look at the money you can make. Millions and millions of views you can generate and all the ad sales you can generate. It is extremely lucrative to go down those dark paths. But
Candace has benefited. Candace has benefited more than anybody else from Charlie's death.
If you want to ask the question, well, who's benefited the most from Charlie's death? Isn't the answer Candace at this point, financially anyway, and audience capture? I mean, come on, like what are we supposed to conclude from that? Should we start casting suspicion on her? It's just, it's ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. But this is the problem though with these influencers that a lot of us used to trust. There's some of these people that we used to consider heroes. They have exploited that trust. They built that trust over years, and now they're exploiting it. And I just
Yeah.
find that, I just can't even believe it. I can't believe it.
I want to be careful to separate, actually, because we said a lot of names. I do want to be careful to separate Matt Walsh from some others, because I do think there's some cowardice in how he's refusing to talk about Candace, but he hasn't fallen into that conspiracy trap and promulgated that. He
has not. No, he's been very vocal in saying we have the killer.
Yes,
this is the best explanation. Your explanations don't fit the evidence at all. Matt, to his credit, no, he's not confronting Candace. I don't expect that he will. I don't know what she would have to do to get him to confront her publicly. But and he objects very strongly to anyone suggesting that he should.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing I've always admired about Matt. He's going to do his own thing. It's just who he is. But I think she would have to say something about him specifically, and then he would. I think he would respond rather than.
I think he would too. I have a lot of respect for Matt. I'm not lumping Matt in. I don't lump Matt in with the woke right either.
No.
So let's
me neither.
Be careful about how. I do agree with you. We don't want to say too many names and make it sound like we're painting with too broad of a brush. I will say though that with one thing that's disappointed me with Matt, and I would say this to him. He had a very strong stand against the alt-right, as he called it, back in 2017, 2018, whatever it was. It was like, you had Antifa on the left, you had the Proud Boys and the neo-Nazis and, on the right. And he was like, these two, they're like opposite sides of the same coin. They deserve each other. They're both evil. Right. They're both cynical. They're both caught up in this, like, I'm oppressed, I'm a victim. And violence is justified in advancing my goals because of my oppression. And they have collectivist attitudes. They're like, cave dwellers in their parents' basements. They're pathetic. He was very strongly against what he saw on the right as being a problem, in addition to the left. And he wrote about it at the Blaze at the time. Yeah. But he doesn't have anything to say about it now. And it's worse now. And so, it's very frustrating from my perspective, because I would love to see voices like his join in denouncing and condemning what needs to be denounced and condemned. But the only thing that people like Matt, and I'll name Megyn Kelly here too, the only thing that they have any condemnation for is people like me or others online who say, hey, why aren't you talking about this? Why aren't you challenging this? They will condemn those people. They'll say, you have no right to tell me what I should be condemning. Stop trying to struggle me, stop trying to control me.
I was going to say, they confuse it with a Maoist struggle session. Like they confuse it with, oh, you're just trying to struggle session me. And it's like, no, I'm trying to call you into the fight. Like, it's not, I know where you stand, really.
I'm trying to hold you to your own principles that you have previously expressed in the past. Do you still believe them or not? I would like to know whether you still believe in those principles or not. Have you changed your views on this? Are you with them now? Like, give us some clarity. I'm asking out of concern for the culture and for you personally. Like when an audience is responding to you that way, a lot of the people in the audience, they really love these commentators that they're following. They have tremendous respect for them. They care about them deeply. They want to know what they think about these things, and they're frustrated that they can't get that clarity. They have every right to ask for it. It's incredible to me, though, that there is willingness to condemn. It's just never targeted at the evil. It's targeted at the people who are asking them to condemn the evil.
Yeah,
and that's where it gets. That's where it gets off the rails.
Yeah. Let's do a little pivot here for the last. Let's go about 5 minutes. One of the people that stood up. This is kind of my segue to really one of the, besides you, Seth, one of the people that stood up to Candace was Allie Beth Stuckey. Very quickly kind of stood up and did that, and I've really appreciated a lot of her work. But Allie Beth is also a Calvinist and somebody who also released a video that Tim and I will be critiquing recently on Calvinism, and so that's send me
the link.
Yeah, that's right. That's my horrible segue into this religious conversation, and perhaps we just have to have just this conversation another time, sometime. But where a lot of people know Seth, the satirist, Seth, the political commentator. But how about Seth, the theologian? Like, where do you stand? We already touched on it a little bit. Do you know of Molinism? If you don't, you can. Tim will. This podcast will go another 2 hours. So we're kind of putting you on the spot here, but let us know, Seth, the theologian.
Well, I've actually had some conversations with Allie about that issue. And Allie's great, by the way. Allie has real depth, not just of insight, but also maturity. She can handle a joke at her expense. She can handle disagreement from a friend. And it doesn't have to devolve into name calling and blocking and attacks and smears. I really appreciate Allie, and I really appreciate her boldness and taking a stand and commenting on the Candace stuff too, because she was, outside of myself and only a few others, one of the first with a large audience to take that risk. And it is a risk for the reasons I gave. It's she's going to come at you, and you don't know how ferociously or for how long she's going to come at you, and what that's going to mean for you in terms of the threats that you're going to receive and the attacks that you're going to get in your own followers that are going to turn against you. So I'm really grateful to her for having that courage. And she's such a great voice to do it too, because Allie is, she's got it figured out. She's got it figured out in terms of what matters, how much our words matter, what we say matters so much. She grounds her argument in Scripture. And she does it with sincerity and thoroughness, in a way that no one else has been able to touch.
And all with a smile.
Yeah. And Charlie was pretty good at that. Charlie's voice is gone. We need other voices who can kind of fill those gaps and make their case and make it from a biblical perspective. And Allie can do that until she gets onto the topic of Calvinism, of course.
Right. Well, she was phenomenal on that Jubilee.
Correct.
Jubilee.
Oh yeah, she did great. She did great. Charlie coached her along for that too and helped her prepare for that. And she expressed a lot of gratitude to him for that. But she was so gracious. She took the time to hear what they were saying and responded to them in a way that wasn't combative. It was very gracious and clear. And I think she disarmed a lot of people that wanted to come at her and hate her. And they saw that this is not a person who's filled with hatred at all and isn't deserving of mine. So I think she was extremely winsome and persuasive in that. And
that was good. I reacted to that Jubilee video a little bit. Actually critiqued not her, but some of the responses that were given to her from a theological perspective. But it was good. It was good.
Well, but onto the theology stuff. I don't at all consider myself a theologian. I'm certainly a layman in that area. I don't have formal training. I read a lot of books. I love to read. So, I read widely, and what I try to do is read the people that I disagree with so that I really understand them. One of the most frustrating things to me, and I know you guys have experienced this, but one of the most frustrating things to me in these conversations is when somebody just doesn't really either they're being dishonest, which I don't like to say about other Christians. I try to be more charitable than that. I don't think they're being dishonest. I think they're ignorant of what the position that they're engaged in trying to refute actually is. And so they misrepresent it horribly. And so I try to go to the sources themselves rather than, instead of reading just why I am an Arminian, I'll read why I am a Calvinist so that I have that side presented in that voice and not just whatever the caricature might be from the side that I happen to agree with. And I think that's been very beneficial to me because that way I can really understand and get around some of those traps that you fall into where you're arguing against a straw man. You're propping up a straw man and knocking it down.
You do try to do that to me. You do try to go to the source, and I know that personally because several years ago, that's where you and I first talked. Is you reached out to me to talk to me about Molinism.
I had questions for you about it, right?
Yeah. So we had our first Zoom call there.
That's always fascinated me because I think, when you talk about middle knowledge, for example, what does God know in His omniscience? I think Molinism really gets it right in the sense that God doesn't just know what has happened or what's going to happen. He knows what would happen in other circumstances. Had I chose to do this instead of that, God knows what would have happened from there.
Right.
And that is, it's mind-boggling to even try to understand how that could be possible. But we are talking about the maximally great being that is God, right? So
Preach.
we can't even wrap our heads around what his knowledge is like. But
Yeah.
I think that if he is God, then he must have knowledge like that. It would be
Yep.
weird to be maximally great and not have that knowledge.
That's right.
Mhm.
I don't think that you could even describe him as maximally great if he
No.
didn't have that knowledge.
right.
And I think that
Yeah.
there are verses in the Bible that make it clear that he does have that knowledge.
That's exactly
I
right.
can't cite them specifically, but I've heard them cited and I've read them.
Yeah.
And there are some examples of God actually saying, that, well, this would have happened
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
had
Yeah.
you done that.
If Tyre and Sidon had heard,
Right.
then they would have repented. Jesus
Right.
said that. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, that's middle knowledge.
Yeah. Well, it's counterfactual knowledge, but if you knew it prior to creation, then it's middle knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's
The
not
philo-
get too
philosophy.
technical. All right. I'm a layman here.
All right. Sorry.
But I'm close, right?
Yes, you
Yeah.
are.
I get the basics. My main issue with Calvinism, is that it distorts the character of God. It gets things wrong from the outset. I've talked to some Calvinists. A good friend of mine explained, he was actually an atheist, and in his 30s, I guess it was, maybe it was his late 20s, he converted to Christianity, specifically into Reformed theology camp, and became an ardent Calvinist overnight. And the reason that he gave me when I asked him, why did you go from atheism to like this strong Calvinism? The reason was interesting. The reason he gave was that he couldn't imagine he couldn't think of God as being God unless he was controlling everything. He has to be controlling everything.
Wow.
In the determinative sense, like
Yeah.
all exhaustive divine determinism.
Yeah.
Like that's,
Yeah.
if he's not God, if he's not doing that, because what that would mean is that there are some things that are outside of his control. And then he's just trying to play catch up or trying to figure out what might happen next. Or, like something may happen that he didn't want to happen and he couldn't prevent it because he's not controlling everything.
Right.
And so I kind of understand the reasoning behind that. But the trap that you get yourself into with that thinking is that you end up elevating to the exclusion of, to the detriment of, to the destruction of everything else, all of his other qualities. You end up elevating his sovereignty over everything else. And you think of God is sovereign first and foremost. I think God is love first and foremost.
Yeah.
And so in the biblical picture that we get all the way through the scriptures from the beginning to the end is that God loves us. He wants what's best for us, but he's given us the freedom to repent and believe, or to thwart him and shut the door in his face.
Mm-hmm.
And the entire human history that's played out and that's recorded in the Bible is of some people getting that right and some people getting that wrong. It is not depicted as everything happens the way God wants it to happen. God is grieved by many things that happen. There are so many things that happen in our lives too, suffering and tragedy that happens. Charlie Kirk's murder, for example, or something like a tidal wave that wipes out hundreds of thousands of people. It's like these seem so senseless, whatever. And to adopt this view of exhaustive divine determinism is to make God culpable. He is behind that in a causal way that maligns his character in a way that I think is unbiblical. So that's my primary. We could get into all of the different points, but that's my primary objection to Calvinism. I don't see that in Scripture. I understand what the proof texts are, but I think that they have to be divorced from either their immediately surrounding context or the context of Scripture as a whole. I think it turns the whole thing into a charade if you start to view it through that lens.
Yeah.
So I don't agree with Calvinism from a biblical perspective. In terms of where I land on what my view is, though, of divine providence, I don't know exactly what you would call my view. Because I do have my issues with. I think we probably talked about this, Tim. I have my issues with Molinism too. One of the things that gets me with Molinism, and you can tell me if I'm wrong about this, but when I've read or listened to William Lane Craig talk about these things, for example, the view basically says that God he's not causing all things. He knows everything that would happen in various circumstances. Mm-hmm. He's in control in the sense that he places people in circumstances where they will do willingly what he knows that they will do. And then you run into problems where, if John walks into a dark alley at night and Mary happens to be walking towards him, and and John decides he's going to rape Mary. Well, you know,
Yeah.
in Molinism, God didn't cause that to happen directly, but he did orchestrate all of the circumstances in everyone's lives so that they would be
Yeah.
in this position where they would make these free choices. And so there's still a level of culpability that you have to deal with there, with God arranging these circumstances where the free choices are made for evil,
So
that I have a problem with.
now this is a great question and objection. And my view of Molinism is slightly different than how Dr. Craig would advance it here. So I don't think that God is using his middle knowledge to ensure every single situation and an instant and moment in the world. I think it's more like what Doctor Strange did in the Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. You know, so I always keep my Doctor Strange close to me, because I think it's a great analogy for
like selecting a possible world.
Yeah. So Doctor Strange, think about, so here we get everything down to even what seems to be gratuitous evil. So in Endgame, Avengers Endgame, you have Gamora giving 2 vicious knee strikes below the belt to Peter Quill, to Star-Lord, right? That seemed to be gratuitous suffering. Like you didn't need it, right? But that came along for the ride. And I don't think Doctor Strange was like, yes, I'm going to get Gamora to deliver these knee strikes here, and I'm going to set it up like this. No, it just came along for the ride because Doctor Strange chose the world best on the best feasible end game. And Doctor Strange created the one feasible, freedom permitting world in which the evil of Thanos was defeated and all the Avengers would be raised from the dead. Well, I think that's similar to what God actually did, that God created the one feasible, freedom permitting world in which evil is ultimately defeated and everybody who's not trans world damned is saved. And so if that includes some gratuitous evil and suffering, then that just comes along for the ride.
Right.
And so, yeah,
in the same way that permitting creatures to be free means that sometimes they're going to do evil. You could adopt, a classical Arminian view or an open theism view or something like that would have those same issues.
Yeah. And God, you mentioned the sexual assault that happened. That didn't surprise God, but he also knew that that's part of the world that leads to the best feasible, freedom permitting end game.
Right.
And so we don't know why, the specifics of why God would allow evil like that. But we do know the macro picture that, hey, well, this has helped me get through instances of suffering as well. Like, oh, okay, well, when I'm going through the suffering, I'm like, well, I trust that a maximally great being exists and that he loves me, and he created the one feasible, freedom permitting world in which evil is defeated and everybody who's not trans world is damned is saved. And if that includes me going through this right now, so be it. I know it's only for a finite time.
Right.
And so it's helping me.
I like that a lot better than the kind of ad hoc ways of trying to get God off the hook for evil that he's clearly responsible for. I think that if you do adopt a view where God is directing all things, like down to those little scenarios, then you end up with a similar problem where, no, he wasn't directly causing it, but he still wanted it to happen in the sense that he arranged for this to happen and could have arranged for something else to happen, but he arranged for this to happen specifically. And I think you do have difficulty in, and what Craig would say is that, well, God isn't responsible for that because the creatures themselves still willingly acted, and they bear responsibility for what they did. And I find that to be as problematic in many ways as like the secondary causes thing that Calvinists do, where they say, well, God wasn't the primary cause. He caused their heart to be such a way that they then did what they did. So he's in control of their heart. He turns it wherever he chooses. He turned it this way, but then they actually acted on it and willingly did it. And so they're the actual, they're the primary cause. He's like a secondary cause behind them.
Right. And I think God can do that stuff, but I just don't think he does.
I think he can too. Yeah. I think you have a good scriptural rebuttal of it too. When you look at David, who sent Uriah off to be killed in battle. He did not murder the man with his own hand. He put him in a position where he knew he would likely be killed, and then he was killed. Right.
Yeah.
And God doesn't let him off the hook for that. No, he was still responsible for that because
he murdered him. Yeah.
Yes. He murdered him by
Uh-huh.
someone else's hand, by
Right.
orchestrating his murder, by ensuring, by rendering certain that it would happen.
Yeah.
And so I don't for a second believe that, trying to get God off the hook for that works, because it didn't work for David.
Mm-hmm.
And why would we suddenly just jettison that reasoning when we come to God?
Yeah.
God is personal. We're personal in a sense that we reflect God's personal nature. I don't see why it wouldn't extend to him. And so I like the response that you just gave, because it doesn't involve this in the minutia, the directing of all things, so that evil happens by God's will.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's biblical to affirm that God wants any evil to happen. He doesn't want anyone to perish, and he doesn't want evil to happen. But evil does happen and people perish. So why is that? You have to have an answer for that. And it can't be God.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to get into all of this in the second edition of my book. Seth, I will make sure to send you a copy.
Yes.
It's going to be out early 26. So stay tuned.
I'll take a signed copy to my office address, please.
Okay.
Yes. There you go. All right, Seth, thank you so much for taking the time. We went even longer than we had initially anticipated, but it is time to kind of cut it short, I think, because I need to go. So,
yeah. Well, I'll send you an invoice for the extra half hour.
All right.
All right. Sounds good. It will not be paid. So, no, I'm just kidding. So once again, thank you for joining us, and thank you for the conversation. It was very enlightening. It was good. We'll be praying for your safety, and we'd love to partner with you in any way that we can in fighting back a culture from evil and fighting for the goodness of God. So thank you.
I appreciate that. And yes, happy to fight with you guys in those fronts.
Awesome.
All right. And as we always say here at FreeThinking Ministries,
stay reasonable.